Hey, how you doing, listeners? This is Gina Versa here with another episode of the Waffle Press movie podcast. We're going to be talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.3, which really enjoyed. But we have a friend of the show, a guest, to talk about this movie with us. And my good friend Ryan is joining us. How you doing, Ryan?
Doing okay. I'm glad to jump on. Excited to talk about this movie. It's a fun one.
Yeah, you saw it twice already, so that's cool. You seen it one more time
Yeah,
than me.
yeah. I saw it once the Wednesday before release, and then again on Thursday. So leaving that Thursday screening and telling my group it was my second time seeing it was kind of a funny thing. They were like, "How did you squeeze that in?"
Yeah, definitely. But Ryan, for people that this is your first time on the podcast that might not know you, what can you tell us a little about yourself? What you do? Any projects you're
Y-
working on?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a cinematographer and editor. With cinematography, I do freelance work. I kind of jump between, narrative shorts. I'm prepping on a feature now, some music videos, fashion films in the past for various, publications, things like that. Kind of pinging around. I'm also an editor for Nebula, which is a streaming platform. I edit for several of their creators on the kind of movie side of things. I edit for Cinema Wins and Patrick Willems, as well as a bunch of other very cool creators over there. So I kind of ping between those two things.
Yeah, any videos that people might have seen of yours that you edited or put together?
Oh man. Well, so for Patrick Willems, I've been editing since fall of 2020. So every single video of his since then, I've gotten my mitts on, I suppose. I can't even think of which ones to call out in particular, but we're currently working on a video about Bollywood,
Hmm.
which will be out in probably within the next week or so. His
Okay.
most recent video was also about, I guess broadly was about vibes, but
Hmm.
it's focused around specifically Tenet and Michael Mann's Miami Vice, and sort of talking about movies that have like labyrinthian plots that you can sort of detach from and engage with on this kind of emotional and sort of image based level. So that was a really cool one. And so if people want to kind of jump into his channel, that'd be a great way to do it.
Yeah.
Cinema Wins is pretty straightforward format wise. They're all fairly similar structurally, but I've been editing for him for a couple months or so now, and unlike Sins, I think he takes a good approach to looking at these films, and it's a lot of kind of picking apart little elements in the background that are kind of fun pieces of texture in movies, even movies that are otherwise sort of dunked on in the culture. Like we just did a video on the original Mario Bros. Movie, which
Nice.
which which I had never seen, and it's a trip, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of fun
Never
things in
seen it.
there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
it's
Yeah,
bizarre.
I think it's I don't know if I could say it's a good movie, but like I appreciate that movie a lot. Like just the fact that it's like Blade Runner meets Mario in the
It is.
90s.
It's funny because I guess they're doing a lot of like, Burton riffing and things like that.
Hmm.
And coming off of like, or it being the work of like, at least at its genesis, the Max Headroom guys, like
Yeah.
it was always going to be bizarre. But I appreciate that they were willing to be in ways that like clearly with the new Mario, they would never be an eighth that strange.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys do tangents and sidebars on this show
Oh, we do
much,
a
but
lot.
I
We do a
can.
lot of that.
You do? Okay, beautiful. That's great. I'm like, I can keep this tight.
Yeah.
But no, I love a good tangent about the Mario movie, and the incredible work of a weirdly game cast, despite
Hmm.
them on set apparently not being at all game.
Yeah, I think Bob Hoskins was like drinking a lot. He's
Yeah,
like,
him and Leguizamo were apparently getting just absolutely blasted to like survive the production.
yeah,
Um,
don't blame them.
no, and then hearing that like Nintendo was so not involved that the production assumed that Peach was Daisy, and that's why Daisy is Daisy in the film. They were like, "Oh, Princess Toadstool," and then Mario Land came out, and the princess was apparently called Daisy, and they went, "Oh, that's Princess Toadstool. I guess her name's Daisy," and then they made her
Hmm.
Daisy in the movie. So it's like a research error, not that like
Yeah.
they put Daisy like
Yeah,
did not care.
it's supposed to be Peach. Yeah.
Yeah, she's Peach in every other sense, character wise and everything, but
Yeah,
and
did
yet
did you hear I think the directors were at the New Beverly at one of the screenings that they did for like the midnight sort of grindhouse stuff that they do.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they did a Q&A. I'd have to like research this a little bit. But apparently they were very appreciative that like people enjoy this movie. Like they never went to like a screening of it, or just kind of like they've never felt like the appreciation. Maybe they're not as online as we are, but they found it very you know, uh, like very heartening, I guess. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's got to be kind of cathartic, like, 30 years down the road, basically, that something where you've basically been lambasted for it
Yeah.
and it sort of tanked your career,
Hmm.
seeing that like people have found some like earnest appreciation for it long after the fact. Sadly, I think just like art kind of goes that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I'm glad that they were able to kind of find some peace in it. If Bob
Yeah.
Hoskins unfortunately never got to see that.
Yeah. Bob Hoskins. I think probably like Dennis Hopper too.
Yeah. Although that guy seemed he was such a like live wire that I have to imagine that he's just kind of like, yeah, that was one of 50 weird ones I did. Like,
Yeah.
I
God,
was a maniac.
strange movie. But
Mhm.
yeah, no. Yeah, your videos are great. It's always good to have a fellow editor on. Appreciate the craft, and then you're also could talk about it a little bit if you want. You also went to ArcLight as well, right?
Yeah, I was an ArcLight employee at the now defunct ArcLight Hollywood.
R.I.P.
Uh, Worked there two different times, including the most recent stretch was a year and a half. I worked there up until the shutdown, so I got to see the at least temporary death of the industry, but potentially more permanent death of the ArcLight. Unclear if they're
Yeah,
reopening. Got to witness it firsthand. Very surreal few weeks there.
yeah. The last couple ones.
Yeah, it was just as you started to kind of see attendance sort of taper off, and we were just like wiping all the surfaces down, and like everyone
Yeah,
suddenly had 10 other jobs.
yeah.
Um,
Man, I love that place. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the podcast, but that was such a great like hangout
oh,
spot.
it's the best, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something where even with all the usual issues that people would have with uh, a part-time job,
Hmm.
pay, working conditions, things like that, kind of. And I'm not here to
Yeah.
bash the management of the ArcLight Hollywood at all.
Yeah.
But we
I'd
all
be
had
a
our
little bit.
issues with it. But I think at the same time, like most of us got jobs there because we love the place, and I think
Hmm.
that for the vast majority, that relationship with it didn't change.
Yeah.
It's the best. Like there was a reason that so many people went there, and why it was kind of this like mecca for like even just people who just moved to LA and are kind of like figuring their shit out, and
Hmm.
um, like people who have been in the industry for decades. Like they all went there, and I think that was
Yeah.
for a good reason.
Yeah. Tarantino went there.
Boy, did he.
Yeah. Yeah. I
writing
think.
writing his films with pen and paper in the booth of the cafe.
Oh
I
man. So
remember
yeah.
he was writing something. It was some script. It was in script form when I passed by him in early 2020 when I was working at the cafe bar. And either that is something that will not see the light of day, or that was
Hmm.
his like early, you know, scribblings that have become the movie critic or whatever the movie is going to be called. I believe
Yeah.
that's it.
His last
Um,
movie, apparently.
but that was his process, which was drinking his blue cocktail, and he always got his like blue Hawaiian thing and
Yeah.
was etching his ideas down. Funny guy.
Yeah, he seemed like a character. Not in a bad way, but definitely a character.
Certainly was one.
Yeah. But yeah, going off of that, just kind of going into this discussion. Favorite James Gunn films, because there's a lot of characters in those movies.
Oh man, I mean, he's kind of had a fascinating career where, I mean, I guess there's not really a great comp. I mean, you're seeing more and more people go from horror to blockbusters.
Hmm.
Um, like Sandberg, Muschietti, are kind of two big note. Oh, James Wan also. I mean, a lot of it's
James Wan,
happening
yeah.
over on the DC side of things. Like they kind of just keep pulling in horror filmmakers. But
For some
Scott
reason.
Derrickson did it as well, um, on the first Doctor Strange. But he's a fascinating one in the sense that like you're kind of seeing his horror sensibilities like come through, but never as horror. Just kind of like the things he finds icky, he gets to sort of play with in his non-horror films, but not even framing them as like scary anymore. He just kind of
Yeah.
finds them to be like fun world texture.
Hmm.
Whereas I think the other horror directors have kind of incorporated their past work as just putting horror beats in their superhero movies.
Hmm.
Um, he's never seemed interested in that.
Yeah.
But I guess kind of going off that, I sort of liked his weirdest ticks, even if a lot of his films now seem to be about like litigating that period of his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so even if he has maybe mixed feelings about them, I mean I can't really tell, but I have a soft spot for Slither uh, as probably my favorite.
Hmm.
It's that or the second Guardians film,
Okay.
which I have my personal biases toward because it was the first movie of any like theatrical scale I ever worked on out here,
Nice.
and so that was kind of my way into the industry after college. But independent of that, I think that movie's pretty exceptional.
Yeah, no, it's like I think I was talking to someone this morning about which is my favorite of the volumes, and we'll get to volume three a little bit later, but I'd still go with volume two after seeing all these because it's like I don't think it ever hits the emotional heights of like Yondu sacrificing himself again or what have you. It's just like that was such a good moment. That's such a good movie, too. Back when kind of felt a little more nicer to the MCU,
Yeah, it definitely came out in sort of a better time for that series, or at least one where they weren't quite getting the same amount of pushback that they do now.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I can't tell if it's that the films were that much better, or I mean, I would have to actually look at a list because there's so many. I can't like
yeah.
pinpoint where things dip.
Like,
It's yeah, I guess this is kind of its own question. I don't want to sidebar away from
mhm.
James Gunn too much, but you can't really talk about him without talking about like the larger arc of the MCU,
Yeah,
I guess. Especially because he now has sort of a strange relationship with it.
hmm, yeah. They kicked him out, then that made him more powerful. I
It is
think.
one of the greatest fail upwards,
Hmm.
at least public fail upwards I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Um, I was joking with a person that I saw the movie with, three, so I saw volume three with, that in the special thanks, I was really hoping to see Mike Cernovich in there. Um,
Right.
because man, like he should buy that guy dinner or something. Be like, hey, I know you're like a weird alt-right fascist.
Yeah.
However, thank you for the money, the gigs,
Hmm.
a studio.
Right. Yeah. Those chain of
Yeah,
events that dude started by digging a
none of
Volt.3.
it
Yeah.
would have happened.
Which it was like stuff he already apologized for, probably felt like regret for, and it's just like it was so fucking weird. Yeah, he led to these chain of events to like lead to him like relaunching DC. You know?
It's amazing. Yeah, it's the classic having your pedophilia jokes dug up to running a film studio pipeline. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
just kind of how you make it in this industry,
yeah. I don't.
famously.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, yeah, for his like trauma movies, I mean, kind of going off of that, like some of his other non-MC films, I think I really enjoy like Super. Super is like probably his best film, or one of his like superhero IP films. Like it's just like very personal. It seems like him processing like his divorce because he was married to like
Jenna
Pam
Fisher, right?
Jenna Fisher, yeah, from The Office, and it's like really sincere. It feels like really personal. Everyone does like such a like awesome job in it. Like Rain, Elliot, Liv Tyler's in it, Mike Rooker's in
Mhm.
it. It's like what a stacked
Yeah, so
cast.
some genuinely kind of like unnerving performances in that movie. I mean, it's maybe not his, well, I guess kind of all of his films from that era is sort of distressing for a number of reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
But that is a fascinating one where it has like it's obviously micro budget, but it has a little bit more polish than some of his
Hmm.
early stuff. But it's like pairing the polish of like a wide release film with, or I guess it wasn't wide release, was it?
I think it
It
had
didn't really make
a
any money, but
yeah. It was through like IFC, so I want to say it was probably limited. It was through IFC
okay.
Films. Yeah.
But like I guess it had a pretty big cast and a lot of people he would go on to work with again or had already
Hmm.
worked with. I mean, the thing he's bashed for by the Snyder Bros online
Oh,
of you
is
work
he?
with the same people multiple
Yeah.
times, and he's like, I'm a director. You're right.
That's those people. I don't know. Like, I don't know if I want to get like into the mud for that, but like,
That's a whole can of
yeah.
worms that might not be worth opening. But
I will say it's weird that they hate him so much because for all intent, from everything I know, he seems to be friends with Zack Snyder, or at least like friendly terms after they worked together with on Dawn
Dawn
of
of the
the
Dead.
Dead. Yeah, it's just like so weird. Like they target this guy of all people that is probably
Yeah,
friends with the dude that they worship, which
it, it it is that strange thing where a lot of it is kind of framed around like weird standing as like your guy, and even if like they can kind of ignore like industry dynamics and relationships between people and things and kind of like weave headcanon of what this is, which
Mhm.
is like James Gunn is this twerp who came in and usurped something, like, which in a strange way is sort of, it's true only in the sense of like he has stinker energy, which is kind of his whole thing. And then once this was a thing that was run by Zack Snyder, and now it is a thing that is run by James Gunn.
Yeah.
And that's, well, I guess it was never run by Zack Snyder. It
No,
was,
not really. No,
he
I
was just
mean,
sort of like the key creative voice on it.
yeah, he
It was
influenced a
sort of like
lot.
kind of ironically sort of like what Whedon was doing with Marvel in the early
Yeah,
2010s.
yeah.
Um, and then obviously those converge in a deeply fraught way.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, to answer your question, Slither is my my
Slither, yeah.
favorite.
Yep.
Yeah, I love
That's a good one.
Slither. It's a strange thing where Super kind of seemed like the last time he fully reckoned with like, what I find harrowing? Sexual violence. Like
Hmm.
that was a big part of his films for so long, and I see
Hmm.
why it a lot of those maybe don't sit well with people, but it does kind of make it a fascinating arc where like him being someone who approaches things he finds distressing as like an opportunity to shock.
Yeah.
Um, and that can be sort of unpacked, I guess, but it's always been something where it was undeniably, I think, effective in his films, but I also
Hmm.
see why those early ones maybe aren't for everyone in ways that obviously his new stuff. I mean, they're $200 million films; they kind of need to be for everyone.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but he has found a strange way to sort of take elements of those movies, his love of tentacles and
Yeah.
shoving them into people. Uh, that has somehow stuck around
Hmm.
through all of this. The number of times that like Groot has shoved his little mittens into
Oh,
like
yeah.
various baddies. I'm like, oh, it's very Slither of him. Like,
Yeah. It carries.
yeah, so
Yeah.
you're seeing kind of things remain, and he's managed to kind of maintain a voice even as he sort of like completely changed the movies he made, which is
Yeah.
fascinating.
Definitely. I don't know if you would see any of that in like movies he wrote, like Scooby Doo or anything, but yeah.
Maybe not. I mean, it does kind of seem like the way he talks about Scooby Doo, he has sort of been like, it gave me a career,
Hmm.
but um, I think it's probably on the whole sort of a for hire job. I mean, I know he
Yeah.
wrote it originally to be way darker. I think if I remember correctly, it was like supposed to be, it was kind of the like modern reinvention, PG-13 slash light R kind of space, and then it had to be kind of reworked for
Hmm.
all audiences. So yeah, I'd imagine that probably a lot of the stuff that he would have wanted to put in that is sort of absent, and then like Dawn of the Dead kind of gave him more freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that one's God, I haven't revisited that one maybe in a few years, but I think like Dawn of the Dead is like, yeah, that one still holds up, I think.
Yeah, I watched it sometime in the past 3 years, somewhere after the world collapsed.
Yeah.
So yeah, somewhere in there. But yeah, no, it is impressive the way that like it doesn't have any of the kind of explicit hallmarks of those two directors, at least in like a very overt way.
Hmm.
But you kind of see like the seedlings of them becoming like very vivid, specific filmmakers as their paths sort of diverged.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That was like that was the nexus point
yeah,
for all these movies. Dawn of the Dead.
right. Yeah, the kind of like the dominoes meme of
Hmm.
them making their little zombie movie to like the anarchy of the studio system.
Yeah. But yeah, no, those early films of his are great. Some of his Troma movies may vary for audience members. I'm not saying seek them out, but like maybe one or two are good, right? One or two.
I think seek out Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, okay.
I think know what you're getting into. I mean, if people are kind of interested in his broader career, I think you kind of can't not watch it.
Hmm.
Because I think in a strange way, like I was sort of getting at before, a lot of those things have stuck around.
Yeah.
I mean, the presence of Sean Gunn obviously is
Hmm.
part of it, but like this maybe is a segue into the third Guardians film, but I
Yeah.
think a lot of his kind of bizarro like animal mask stuff he's doing in Romeo and Juliet is
Hmm.
sort of like a very quick and dirty version of the counter Earth animals
Yeah.
in Guardians 3, which is sort of fascinating. Like it's the exact same kind of design approach to like human animal hybrids that like you're seeing him revisit
Hmm.
what 25 to 30 years later or whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. Something like in his brain, like kind of led us to all the counter earthy animal aliens, which interesting. Yeah, I guess we'll get onto just Guardians then. Yeah,
Yeah.
did you have any like thoughts or expectation just going into this film? I was kind of like I knew it'd be great. To like what degree I'm like, But like yeah, when we're getting to that last act and some of the stuff he like sets up, it's like it gets pretty good, I think.
It's a fascinating thing. Yeah, kind of this was sort of where my head was at coming into this movie. I mean, I've always kind of had a sort of one foot in, one foot out relationship with the MCU. I've never been like fully in the hole on all of
Yeah.
it. I am not a comics person, not as a
Okay.
like ugh comics, but
Yeah.
like yeah, not in a like I want to give a nerd a swirly approach or something. I just,
Yeah.
haven't been a person who dives into them, but I'm also, if a big movie comes out, I'll see it, and if a small movie comes out, I'll usually see it. There's just
Yeah.
a lot more of those. So,
Hmm.
but I see all of these, and despite that, though, I think I, like many, have a bit of a different relationship with the MCU now compared to 6 years ago
Hmm.
when the last one came out. Um, I'm sure James Gunn does too,
Yeah. Yeah.
in a certain way. But yeah, I guess I mean I went in with like somewhat, high expectations. A buddy of mine worked on this film as a
Hmm.
post PA, kind of working in the same space, different job, working in the same space that I did on the second one.
Oh, cool.
And so I kind of was getting the like, how are things going, like litmus test from him.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't tell you anything. I'm like, I know. I'm like, is the movie good? He's like, yeah, no, the movie's great. And I'm like, it can be hard to see when you're in it.
Hmm.
So like, I was taking him being like the movie's great with like a grain of salt, but also he seemed willing to be like, if something wasn't going to work, he'd be
Hmm.
but he obviously told me nothing about the movie content wise.
Yeah.
I'm saying this explicitly on the air. He did not break NDA.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Don't want
Yeah.
to throw him under the bus.
Yeah. No, he told me everything. It was incredible. And this is his name. You can reach him this way.
Hmm.
This is his address. There's a battering ram on his door
God.
tomorrow morning.
Marvel snipers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like little laser dots coming in through his window as we speak. This hasn't even been uploaded yet. But no, so I was kind of like gauging that. And so I was, excited about it. But I also knew that Gunn had to sort of deal with uh Marcus and McFeelyisms that had been incorporated
Yeah.
on Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah.
More specifically, Endgame, obviously, because Infinity War he at least got to like tinker with dialogue and things, but Endgame he was gone, and so his original plan on the second film, at least maybe not plan, but at least brief thought, was to kill Gamora, and then decided maybe I shouldn't do that. I don't want to take that off the table. Uh, and then he pivoted to Yondu, which I think was a great choice. I mean, it's fascinating that Gunn seems to have a very good, or not has had, I guess his dad just passed away recently, but had a very good relationship with his father, which is incredible considering his films are so much about people who have horrendous relationships with their dads.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he just finds the dynamic interesting, but
Yeah.
it was a good pivot. But then unfortunately, yeah, he was gone, and they said, "What if we kill her and don't kill her?"
Yeah.
And then said, "Here, take it."
Yeah.
And so that had to be
It's
dealt with.
yeah, I don't know. I guess that could go on another tangent, but like Endgame makes just weird, bizarre choices. Like just
It's
Mhm.
strange. It makes bizarre choices. I'm an Endgame defender.
Mhm.
I think it's one of their best movies. I think it's
Better.
far and away the best movie the Russos have made.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, yeah, certainly better than like the Gray Man or like what was the Tom Holland one?
Sure.
Cherry.
Cherry. Look, we don't have to get into either.
Mhm.
But no, I mean, I love Endgame. I think the pomp and circumstance around it was actually met by my experience watching it.
Yeah.
I think it's like structurally everything a 3 hour event film should be.
Hmm.
Um, Kills, it's so fun. And so I think killing Gamora was something that made sense in that movie, but
Okay.
it's just you don't consider what that puts on the next person's plate.
Yeah.
Um, like it's television. I mean, that's kind
Yeah.
of the ultimate knock of these things is everyone's like, it's just TV, which now it is both TV and movies, but
Yeah.
yeah, they heard your shit's television and they said that
Yeah, let's make some TV like filler episodes.
look we don't have to get into the Disney Plus stuff,
Yeah.
but it's got its problems.
Yeah.
I have a mixed
Hmm.
opinion on it, but no, I think this is a movie that I went in with pretty high expectations because I've never disliked one of his movies.
Hmm.
I think is what it is. I think he's just very, very good at making films that, on paper and given the way that they're talked about, I should find abrasive,
Hmm.
but I don't.
Hmm.
I can't really articulate what separates him from like a Deadpool type approach to these because it's small, but it's distinct. I think there is a genuine sincerity and like a childishness in like a loving way with these films.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very empathetic, I would say, more than like Deadpool, which is like, I mean, I like the Deadpool films, but wouldn't say like they're like works of art or something.
No, I mean I like the second one of those at the very least, and it's lovingly made and sincere. But I think there is, I'm not trying to like pit things against each other or anything,
Yeah.
but um, I think there is just a means to an end with the kind of stinkerness of the Guardians movies. I mean, that's
Hmm.
sort of their entire backbone is people being nasty because they're actually kind of dealing with stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's not subtle about it in these films. I think he has a very deft way of writing films that are not very subtext heavy and they lay everything they're about on very thick, but in ways that feel very, I don't know, there's something sweet about it in a certain way that
Hmm.
people are willing to be so candid. Um, it seems like I'm like giving him a pass for like the normal thing you'd bash a script for, but
Yeah.
I think it's just like the commitment of the performances to people that are very intensely navigating their relationship with people around them.
Hmm.
And that holds up in this movie too. I mean, across all three films, that's been something he's been really locked in on.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would say yeah, that's kind of like the linchpin of all these for sure. But yeah, I would say yeah, that's just kind of some of the things that hold these films together, just like the emotions of like Rocket. We finally get to see his origin, which is pretty traumatic. I don't know. This was kind of like one of the talking points of this film, just kind of the places it goes. Not to say it's like like distasteful or what have you, but like man, like some of the stuff where they're experimenting on Rocket, those are like really like tough scenes to watch. I think if you're like an animal lover or just some of the character arc, because it's like kind of a pretty dark movie. I felt like just like I guess we'll go into like full on spoilers, but Rocket, Lila, and then his other animal companions are everyone except him is just
Teeps and
killed.
Floor,
Peace and
yeah.
Four, yeah, they're just like killed by the High Evolutionary. I'm
It,
like
it's
God,
it's gnarly. I mean, I think where people land on this movie overall, there are kind of questions of structure and how much jumping around it has to do and things like that. But I think a you're in or you're out kind of fulcrum point of this movie that I've heard is whether you find that stuff to be effective or mean. Um, because especially for a blockbuster, but also kind of in general, it's an oddly nasty
hmm
movie, or at least within its certain sections, it's an oddly nasty movie.
yeah,
Um, and it's very eager to like kind of punish the audience. I mean, I think there's probably an element of like, James Gunn sort of devilishness in it, where it's like, especially watching it a second time, the scenes, the initial scenes with that group of four animals in the cage is played so cute in
hmm
like such an aggressively cute way that it's almost funny. And it kind of makes me think that for all the emotional sincerity of that material, and I know he definitely believes in it, and it certainly plays. I mean, I've heard plenty of people say they, cried during that arc of the film,
yeah,
but I think there's a certain element of him being like, I'm gonna pound you with this being the cutest little group of critters in the world, and like have them say just the sweetest things and nothing else, and then have them all get shot. Like,
yeah, yeah.
like there is a certain element of stinkerness in that,
hmm
despite the fact that it's very emotionally honest. And that's the classic gun magic trick with these movies is being willing to kind of lean on his tricks and kind of absurdisms and things, but have it still play as sincere.
Yeah, yeah,
You can kind of take it on two levels. So yeah, it was a thing where like even during those sections, I found myself laughing at how lovey-dovey it was trying to be with them. And I'm like, you son of a bitch.
yeah,
But it works, clearly. It's just, sometimes it people seem to be saying sort of to what end.
yeah.
And I think it's a fair question. I mean, you're going to these films not to be punished, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's bold that he was willing to go there. And
Yeah,
he's kind of willing to dig into it.
especially for a Marvel movie, like this is like I don't know, certain scenes like go almost to the edge of being like R-rated. I felt, you know.
Yeah. I it's something where I heard this not through that friend, but kind of through grapevine. That like, there were moments of violence that had to be kind of calibrated to clear
hmm
MPAA.
Mm,
I can't verify that myself. I wasn't there,
yeah,
but there seem to have been multiple reports that things had to be fine-tuned.
yeah,
And no, I mean the fact that a Marvel film is anything that could push them. I mean, I guess we never really know. Maybe there were gnarly elements of past films that had to be like fine-tuned, like maybe like Doctor
hmm
Strange
all the Raimi stuff.
had,
Yeah,
yeah, like maybe like Raimiisms had to be sort of reset, which I would totally believe. Like that's something where I'm like, I could see them having to scale back on certain
yeah,
elements. Um, but it really does seem like this is a movie where he got to do whatever he wanted. It's just that he still had certain elements he was boxed in by. Um,
Yeah.
which just makes the movie I think is a little crowded, I guess, in a certain regard. Where all of the elements are good, it just has a lot of elements it has to deal with in 2.5 hours, pretty much on
Pretty
the dot.
much. Yeah, I want to say it's like 2.5. Yeah.
Yeah. So like for an oddly lean plot, like it's at least it's the smallest scale of the Guardians movies for sure. In terms of like the journey of it or something,
Mhm.
or the stakes of it seemingly, although it's kind of unclear how destructive the High Evolutionary's like final, plan is. Him destroying the world is not as, or the universe is not as front and center as like Ego's plan,
Yeah.
where you actually see like the ticking clock of it.
hmm Yeah, it's just I mean he was yeah, I really enjoyed the performance of High Evolutionary. I forgot that actor's name because he's in like Peacemaker. But yeah, kind of I guess we got the general plan that he was just trying to I guess he was kind of genocidal, I suppose.
Yeah, he definitely is. It's a question of what did he feel? Because they sort of talk about how he wants to like perfect the universe in a certain
Mm-hmm.
way, and you see him blowing up planets that he considers failures.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's unclear if he is sort of someone who believes that he needs to like commit genocide to creations that aren't his.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that was a little unclear.
it's yeah, and I don't mean that as a knock. It's I frankly kind of universe shattering stuff is sort of where my eyes glaze over at these.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why Gunn's work is so effective because he seems sort of either uninterested in it or when like his plots go there, the backbone of it is always something else.
Yeah.
Like there's something very like with Guardians 2, there's something very like Revenge of the Sithy about the fact that it's like this is a world falling apart, but really it's about two people.
Yeah.
Um, and their relationship and how there's a macro and micro conflict sort of happening at the
Mm-hmm.
same time.
A lot of stuff
Um,
going on.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I think in the comics, yeah, I think just from what I know of the High Evolutionary, yeah, he's kind of like someone where it's like eugenics, things like that. So I think he was trying to get rid of, you know, uh, the worlds he's, seemed inferior or what have you. Um, I think in the comics, he's more committed to creating like bestials, like the animal hybrids, for some reason.
okay,
That's his
okay.
thing. If you ever seen the cartoon Spider-Man Unlimited, he's
Not
in
in
it.
like only like an episode or two,
Oh,
not anything
okay.
I've like actively watched.
Has the High Evolutionary in that.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, from what I understand,
hmm
the characters in these Guardians movies, their comic depictions are often very different. Where it's like he took some kind of key bullet points about these characters and then sort of otherwise filtered them through his kind of basic plan.
Yeah.
Which that's not new. I mean, I think a lot of approaches to comics to make them kind of maybe not palatable to a mass audience. Like I don't think they're that cynical about it, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's I think they recognize that only a certain percentage of the audience is going to be people familiar with these characters, and
hmm
so they want to approach the source material with like basic respect, but they also, know that that gives them an opportunity. And
Yeah. I mean, you can't adapt like everything about a character or just like stuff that it's kind of goofy by today's standards.
yeah, but no,
Yeah.
you were getting into the performance for High Evolutionary. I'm gonna butcher the actor's name
hmm
probably, which I apologize for, but yeah, Chukwudi Iwuji, I believe.
hmm
If I got that wrong, please
Yeah.
bash me in the comments of wherever this
Comments.
is
Yeah.
posted. Um, but yeah, no, his Shakespeare background is very much something that Gunn seemed like he wanted to lean on here, and I think that rules because
Yeah.
it's the kind of character where because he doesn't really have much interior concern,
hmm
like there isn't some like, oh, it's really about his trauma. Like no,
Yeah.
there's none of that. It's like
uh-huh.
no, he's just a bad guy. Like
Yeah. Some
that's
people
the
are
kind
just
of
shitty. Yeah.
yeah, some people just suck, and that is something where I think a lot of even Marvel villains can be kind of lost in terms of like, oh, is that character or that performance memorable? It's like playing a bad guy who is just a bad guy, uh, unless you're like maniacal
Hmm.
and you're playing it in some like massive way. I think those performances can be lost pretty easily in kind of like the muck. But there is something just so intense about his performance,
Yeah.
um, that I think he brings a certain like bombast to it, which is kind of mesmerizing, and it like really elevates like I mean kind of every scene he's in, but especially the rocket sections, like the
Yeah.
flashbacks.
Yeah, he's terrible. Yeah, he's like killing
Bad guy.
animals. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
bad guy.
Yeah.
No, the wiping out of animals, obviously the like really gnarly, like especially like the little turtle section, pretty ghastly stuff.
Hmm.
But there is a certain kind of just air he brings, even in unspoken moments of him just kind of committing like abhorrent acts of violence or just cruel treatments like everybody around him. No, I think he's phenomenal. I mean, and he's also across from a very good voice acting performance from Bradley Cooper, who I've always stood by. I'm like, he's a great actor, but
Hmm.
this is some of my favorite work of his. Like,
Yeah,
I've
I
always
mean,
been like his like Rocket is just such a well
mhm.
fleshed out character, and he delivers.
Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't really get talked about, I guess, or maybe I'm like not hearing. But yeah, he's like the heart of these movies, and then too, like the performance, he's giving like a really like solid, like he's doing like this different voice. It's a lot of like emoting too, yeah, like as opposed to like, some of the, you know, like voice acting that you see in like, because some actors just aren't voice actors. Like that's its own craft, that's its own art. But he,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, some of these, star-studded animated films, those characters just feel astonishingly, like violently flat
yeah,
because they don't. There's a fear, I think, to like elevate in a certain way, and I think what was smart with his performance in this, I don't know what of his process was, or what of his, overall performance was developed by him versus like things pitched by Gunn. I mean, it's always a collaboration, obviously, but I guess what was smart is they kind of said seemingly like a decade ago, like you can go as big and absurd as you want to here.
yeah.
The emotional honesty will be there. But
Hmm.
him getting to have like kind of a wild voice and like a kind of getting to push all of the emotional beats a little harder and like kind of establishing that ground early allowed him to like really take big swings.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and yeah, I mean, I guess he gets lost because he's never on set. He is never on screen. You never see his face. And he also never does press for these movies. And so I think you almost forget that he's involved in it, despite him
Yeah,
being a massive star.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I was shocked when I saw him at the New York premiere, and I
Hmm.
was like, "Oh, right, they were in his neighborhood." So he's like, "Yeah, I'll pop in. Like, I'll come
Yeah.
say hey, take some pictures." And yeah, when I
Hmm.
saw the red carpet photos for this movie, I was like, "Oh my God, a Bradley Cooper appearance at a Guardians event.
Hmm. Yeah, he
Never
doesn't.
thought I'd see it."
Yeah, he doesn't really do too much. Not to say I don't think like he hates these movies, but like maybe it's just not his thing. I don't know. Just speculating, but yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the ideal, isn't it? It's like, by all accounts, I was never around at Disney Marvel when they were doing press for these.
Hmm.
But uh, my sister was, because she was at in this the Disney Marvel kind of intersection job that I was in. She was in it before me,
Hmm.
and I remember her saying that during press for these movies, it was kind of a wild thing to watch, where it's just the actors have to just sit down for hours and hours and hours, and they just keep parading in a bunch of different press people who then ask them the same question over and over and over again. And then knowing full well that they have to now travel somewhere else and then do this again, which obviously she didn't get to see because she wasn't traveling. But even just the ones that were happening at Disney, it was just a thing of like, oh yeah, this seems exhausting.
Hmm.
So if you could be in a Marvel movie, the gig is fast, get your bag.
Yeah.
You've kind of beautiful performance,
Hmm.
and then let the movie come out, go see it once, be like, nice, that's pretty good,
Yeah.
and then live your life. Like,
Yeah. It's a
incredible.
dream.
Get to make your Leonard Bernstein movie.
Hmm. Gonna make
Like,
was it A Star Is Born? Not sure if you like that, but really
great
good.
movie. Great
Yeah.
movie. Yeah, big fan. I think he's a very talented director. I'm
Hmm.
excited to see the Bernstein movie this year.
Same. Yeah.
Um, but no, it's fascinating. I mean, I guess he's one of many actors like starting to kind of dip their toes in directing land. Didn't Karen Gillan direct something recently? Am I crazy?
Yeah, no, she did this movie where it was like this really intense drama that was about like alcoholism. It was called like it was like something the party ends or something like that. It was like an independent film. I haven't seen it, but it seemed to like go to some really dark places. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember thinking it sounded like a very like, capital H heavy, capital I indie.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
for better or for worse, I have no clue how it is. I know that there are versions of that kind of movie that I don't really like.
Yeah.
Where I'm just kind of a little shrug on them. Like I saw To Leslie. I not to make To Leslie catch strays out of nowhere, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's just kind of this like oppressive thing with big performances. And so I think whenever I see a movie like that, I sort of approach them a little cautiously, and I often don't end up seeing them. But not to say there aren't good ones. And so, it could be great. I mean, her acting sensibilities are clearly good.
Yeah.
Um, I think she's outstanding in all of these movies.
Hmm.
Um, and kind of, I guess, sort of the sneaky big arc of these is sort of hers. I mean,
Yeah, she goes through like such a transformation from that first movie.
yeah, and the time jumps in these or lack of them is obviously very hard to track. And despite the fact that like there's apparently a massive time leap that isn't really established between the second and third film,
Yeah.
I was never annoyed by like, oh, she's changed so much and I'm distracted by that and like that's not the same person. Like
Hmm.
she managed to have the character evolve a lot, but I still saw the path. And I think just yeah, whatever interplay between Gunn's writing and his directing and her performance, um, yeah, I think the complete path of it's just really lovely. And I remember hearing, I don't know if you saw this interview where she was trying to crack the character, and uh, Gunn was like, "Try Clint Eastwood meets Marilyn Monroe,"
Hmm.
and she was like, and that was it. The whole thing just
Hmm. I don't know
locked
that actually.
immediately. And yeah, and then I remember hearing that, then like thinking about her performance, I'm like, oh right, that is it. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's what that
The
is.
voice and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, the kind of breathiness and the kind of like very like she's doing this kind of very dramatic like catwalk-esque walk,
Hmm.
like very like hip heavy, but also like very gruff at the same time, and
Yeah.
and
Great
like playing it
character.
for laughs, but also like you really kind of care for her. No, I mean everyone's doing fantastic work in this. I think it was a good reminder that for all of the bashing he gets for a number of reasons, Pratt has the juice when he's putting it towards the right kind of project.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Um,
like yeah, he's a fairly good great actor. Yeah. Objectively.
he has
Yeah.
he has his like limitations in his range, but I think this is sort of the monkey's paw of these movies is like they launched his career as an action star, and I think that's such a shame.
Hmm.
Where it then tossed him into like
Jurassic World.
Jurassic World, Tomorrow War. There was that military one that I'm forgetting what it's called.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I forgot. He's in
Even
the
Passengers.
yeah. He's in that Amazon show. I think right.
Yeah. And it's all of these characters that seem to have taken the wrong lessons from him being in the Guardians films. It's like he got in good shape and he plays a character who has a gun. And they're like, oh, and then they,
Yeah.
gave him those roles. And they're just, he doesn't, he can't really do much with like dry people. Like he's not like a Gyllenhaal who can like spin that into something like very unnerving or just like transfixing. He just sort of disappears into them. But I rewatched Moneyball a couple
Hmm.
days ago, and I'd forgotten how good he is in that movie.
Hmm.
Um, where there's these tiny beats of like he plays uncertainty very well, or like a person trying to kind of fill dead air.
Yeah. Definitely.
Um, you know, like I remember the in the second film the whole thing of I thought where he's talking to Gamora in the opening scene, and he's like, I thought that guns were my thing and swords were your thing, and he's
Hmm.
getting like sort of upset about it. He's like, no, I thought that was kind of what we were doing. Like when he gets to kind of play in that weird space,
Yeah.
um, he's outstanding. I mean, he also made an absolute meal of Marvel's first use of fuck in this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. That was great. Yeah. That was a. I was like, that was a good crowd reaction. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
in the film.
Oh,
Like drop.
killed in the crowd.
Hmm.
I almost
Dropped
wish
the
that
F bomb.
clip wasn't online before the
Oh
movie came
yeah.
out because I
Yeah.
was like, I knew it was coming. I mean, it's still played, and probably there are people less online than me,
Yeah. Same.
as most people are, who hadn't seen that clip and busted out. Like, I guess it's very Deadpool to find the word fuck funny,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's
It's funny.
really funny when it's
It's
used
funny.
right. It's
Hmm.
really funny. And it was fun, I guess. Gunn kind of gave him a second crack at it because the second film had one that's ADR'd over.
Hmm.
Do you remember this?
No, I don't actually know. What was that?
So in the Mary Poppins scene at the very end,
Uh.
um, Yondu goes, "Was he cool?" about Mary Poppins, and then in this kind of very loving moment, Quill goes, "Hell yeah, he's cool." But when he says "hell," you see his mouth say "fuck."
Hmm.
And it's 80 yard over. It's one of these things where you don't notice it, but then as soon as you do notice it, it's so vivid. But I guess
Yeah.
that's kind of ADR. Like
Yeah.
his mouth in no way says hell.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know why they got rid of it. Maybe they found it to be like, I mean, if I had to guess, it's probably that that's such a sweet moment that within a Marvel movie, saying fuck is like, oh my God, they said the thing. Like I think it'd probably be distracting, I guess is
Hmm.
probably a lot of it. I doubt it was like a studio note or anything, but they found a great place for it here where it's like it's not some big dramatic moment. It's that Nebula can't open the door to a sedan
Yeah.
and
It's
she's treating it like she's disarming a bomb. It's
yeah.
so funny.
Yeah. It's a good. There's a lot of good comedic beats.
Yeah,
Um.
her pushing in the button and then the hunch down, like, okay, what's step two? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, any kind of going off of beats here. Any there was a lot of good needle drops in this. Any good music? Any sort of like tracks that cut that you thought were that you really enjoyed? I have a few. Film me go off.
yeah, it's because it's sort of a more sprawling soundtrack decades wise than either of the other ones,
Hmm.
for kind of plot based reasons, obviously, but also just is in general. I'm kind of trying to like pinpoint what jumps out. I think in kind of a like, I had a soft spot for this, and so it was funny to hear it. You know, I've been to a Mowgli's concert. It was very
Hmm.
fun. And so I was like, how is he going to weave San Francisco by the Mowgli's into this movie when I heard it was in it? Like, that's
Yeah.
bizarre. And it arrives in probably the film's most chaotic use of cross-cutting,
Hmm.
where it's like Gamora's piloting, was it the Bowie? Is that the name of the ship?
Hmm.
Yeah, like she's piloting the Bowie, and it's like she's on the ship, she's like ripping through trees or something like that, and like everyone is on the ship thinking that the others are on the ship, and so like the camera's jumping around, like
Hmm.
trees are being snapped, and Gamora's screaming, and all the while like diegetically San Francisco by the Mowgli's is like blasting through the speakers. I'm like,
Yeah.
that is maybe I think when my like this movie's a little scattered
Hmm. A little
settle
bit.
like it finds a certain beauty in that moment where I'm like, it's scattered and boy oh boy, I like it. Like it's
Yeah.
I think it's kind of an amazing moment where it's embracing the chaos
Hmm.
and I think that song is used very well.
Dog days are
Obviously,
over.
oh right, as the kind
Florence and
of
the Machine.
yeah, I saw a video of her watching the movie. It was very lovely.
Oh, yeah, that was sweet. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
she's
stuff like
watching the
that.
scene and Miss Welch was having a good cry.
I never knew that was her last name
Yeah.
until now. Uh,
Yeah, it's no, I mean there's a lot of good ones. What is it like? obviously there's the kind of big No Sleep Till Brooklyn sequence where like the song isn't really the hook, but it's, I mean, the hook is the scene. It's staged in a very like,
Hmm.
I guess it's Matthew Vaughn-esque in a
A
certain
little
way.
bit, yeah.
Um, but like I guess I like the sensibility of this movie a lot more. So I find that again, it's Deadpool versus this type thing. It's sort of also Kingsman versus this, where it's like this movie isn't trying to insist to me that it's transgressive. And so I think in its bloodiest moments, I don't feel like it's trying to prove anything. I think it just kind of is.
Hmm.
And I think that's why the No Sleep Till Brooklyn sequence works really well. It's also
Yeah.
just very well staged. I mean, the camera is on one. And like his insane wide lensing thing during it as the camera's like yo-yoing around and
Yeah.
like, when someone like holds a gun towards the camera, it looks like it's like Wong Kar-wai's Fallen Angels or something. It's just everything is
Yeah.
so warped and
Hmm.
ripping around, and yeah, it's very kinetic, and so it's a fun one, I guess. What
Yeah.
jumped out to you?
Yeah, I think like the one that's like caught in my head right now, because they were like some great ones, Reasons by Earth, Wind and Fire, just playing as they're trying to get out of that corporation, the Flesh planet. And
Oh
it's just
yeah, well
like, yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's a
So,
great sequence.
mhm.
The like the butthole world or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole thing just looks like a sphincter.
Hmm.
Was it the Orgo core, the Orgo scope?
Hmm. I think
Yeah.
Orgo Corp. Yeah. A
Um,
lot of names in these movies, but that was great. I think No Sleep Till Brooklyn, the second Chris Pratt movie this year to have the Beastie Boys.
it is funny. Yeah. The kind of bizarre overlap there. I don't
Yeah.
know if I would have predicted that the Mario movie would have a Beastie Boys needle drop.
Mm.
But I have a lot of needle drop related questions about the Mario movie, but
Yeah.
that's for a different time, I
Yeah.
suppose.
It is. Yeah. I think. Yeah. And yeah. In the meantime, that was one of my favorites. Since You've Been Gone, that was great. And of course, it opens with Radiohead's "Creep."
A hard thing to get away with.
Yeah.
Uh, I
Overplayed
think,
song. Yeah.
well, overplayed, but I think also just kind of the joke of that song being overplayed is almost buried the song even further, where it's like it's almost like Play Freebird. It's like it has that level of like absurd relationship
Yeah.
with like culture and its prominence that like when it came on, I was like, oh my God, like this is what we're going, but earns it. I mean, it's a good scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Goes with the
It's a lovely
character.
opening. It's also very cool how the tone and palette of these movies is set very quickly within their opening credits.
Hmm.
I also appreciate that he just likes opening credits a lot.
Yeah.
I have such a soft spot for them, and I think you have your audience, and I think it's a chance to do something non-narrative to set tone and create this sort of inviting space. And I think I look at so many Marvel films, and they have these beautiful animation sequences with their credits at the very end. I'm like, move these to the beginning.
Yeah.
It would have been so lovely.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
lost art of like opening credits, I think. Like you see stuff like some good, there's some good like Hitchcock ones. Stuff like Doctor Strangelove. You know,
yeah, I mean, I
I think it's
remember
memorable.
as just kind of a test because I was sort of curious how it would play. I went into the first Black Panther and I moved those credits
Hmm.
from from where they are now, which is up to the end of the film, to I believe where the Marvel logo hits. I just put the credits there instead.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's elements of the sound mix that I didn't have like a 5.1 that I
Yeah.
could access, so I couldn't fully strip it down. But I was like wanted to kind of see how it plays. I'm like, this would just be cool. The planes flying away in Oakland and then jump into all the stars and then all the credits are playing. And like, yeah, it's something I wish was there, and it makes you feel like you're watching something that has a certain, I don't want to say like importance because I don't know what that means, but
Yeah.
it gives it a certain weight, and you
Like,
really kind of like you get to settle in a little.
yeah, yeah, it's like transitioning to like a different headspace for sure. Like this is a
Yeah,
movie.
if you get
Yeah.
to track anything, you're just kind of like in the opening in this sequence, you like really get a sense of nowhere and like what everyone's relationship is now and
Hmm.
like how things have evolved in
Yeah. Without
post.
watching like the Christmas special.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which, people have, I guess, said that like that established that Star-Lord and Mantis are half siblings.
Yep. That's right.
But I I remember hearing that that was established there, and I did watch it, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's actually a very very fun
Hmm.
holiday special. But I didn't even remember that that was established there because I didn't think you needed to because Mantis was created by Ego, and Ego was Peter's dad. So of course they're half siblings. I didn't think that that's
Yeah.
a reveal.
Hmm.
So when people say like, "Why do I need the holiday special for canon?" I'm like, you don't need to know that. You just need to know how babies work. Like I like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like,
it's
I thought
not.
this is just known.
Yeah. It's not as necessary.
It just never acknowledged, I guess.
Hmm.
They acknowledge it more explicitly in this one.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess just winding down too. Ending. Where these characters are left off. They all kind of like splinter off, do their own thing. I thought that was like really like. I'm so glad. Like they didn't kill anyone off. Not like I'm attached to these characters, which I am, but like just the fact like it just ends where it's like yeah, people's lives change, their life changes, like their relationship change with like friends or people or family, and you kind of like do your own thing or go off your separate ways. That was really like profound, I felt.
No, it's a really lovely ending. I think in part of my challenge with like the kind of densely packed aspect of this film, I think it has to do a lot of really quick shorthand
Hmm.
throughout the film to tee up that this like departure is going to happen. Um, like I remember watching it the first time and going in the scene where they're all sitting around in the bar and nowhere and being like, I guess this is it. Like I was like, oh, we're doing that. I didn't think we needed to. The movie didn't feel like it was doing that because it just everything is moving so quick. But then watching it back a second time, knowing that's where it ends, I was like, okay, sure. There are little like 15 to 20-second sections peppered in the movie for each character of
Hmm.
them being like, what if I went and did something else? And they're like, oh yeah, you could do that. Anyway, and then they move
Yeah.
on. And
Yeah.
so it's a thing where I'm like, I think he was sort of burdened by having to cover a lot of ground. And I maybe think it maybe needed one more movie to like fully get everyone to that point.
Hmm.
But even despite that, once you're in that scene, it's, performed in a very lovely way. And it's nice that everyone kind of gets to have their sort of home base with their people.
Yeah.
They all get to have their crew, which I think is something that is sort of the centerpiece of all of these is like a fear of being alone is so prominent in all these films. And I think Gunn, when he left these characters, really wanted to say that like he left them all with a loving either family or surrogate family or a group, even if those aren't all the same group.
Yeah.
Like they're going their separate ways, but they find love from other
Yeah.
outlets and like a sense
It's
of purpose and things.
yeah, it's really beautiful, I think. Yeah. Yeah, it's like I don't know, yeah, just the fact that it just ends like, yeah, they're doing their own thing. It's they're just dancing too at the end. Like that's really sweet. You know,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
a really lovely little moment. Yeah, with the Florence and the Machine song playing, and even though Gunn was saddled with the Gamora death, rebirth, or not rebirth, but this is a different Gamora because timey wimey
yeah.
shenanigans. Um, I thought it was really sweet, I guess bittersweet, really, that he used it as an opportunity to talk about moving on from somebody
Hmm.
and how that's like a challenge and as people sort of diverge, finding ways to do it with grace
Yeah.
um, and allow love to evolve into something different
Hmm.
where there may not be romance but you still love that person.
Yeah.
and I think that he approaches that in a really beautiful way. And so like those kind of final uh, interactions between Peter and Gamora, I think are a really lovely sort of button to that relationship, even if it's not the one that he would have planned on doing.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just, man, it's just like I can't, self processing all that stuff for it. But yeah, it's just cool. Like, just that it had a definitive ending. I mean, maybe
Mhm.
like one or two characters you'll see, but like just this story, for like a Marvel movie, it had like such a, this is how Peter and Gamora went. It's very mature. Like they're just two different people now. They're not going to get back together. I think that was like, man, that's a really like real sort of like statement to make in this
Yeah,
like blockbuster movie.
I saw some people say this is going to be like their exit from the MCU, and they're like, "All right, I'm tapped out." And I'm like,
Yeah.
honestly, if you were gonna jump off of the train of like the blockbuster behemoth and like ongoing narrative, this seems like a lovely place to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Good place to like that's the exit sign.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about that ending. So, very beautiful. Love that Peter went back to Earth and everything. And yeah, it's a sweet little moment with his grandpa. Really hit close to home. And yeah, just really enjoyed it. But yeah, I don't think we have anything else to add. Yeah. It's
I mean, I could
gonna,
talk about this movie for hours, I suppose, but that's,
yeah.
not trying to turn this into a 3.5 hour tome about
Yeah.
Guardians 3.
Yeah, we don't do 3-hour podcasts. Unless, no, I think we have done some, but
Have
I
you?
haven't personally. But
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, thanks for dropping by, Ryan. Where can people find you if you don't mind
Yeah,
sharing
they
socials?
can find samples of my photography and some of my cinematography on my Instagram, which is just my name, so at Ryan Alva, RyanAlva. My website has more cinematography work, has my reel and things, which is just going to be my name.com, so RyanAlva.com. Otherwise, yeah, I guess as far as my editing, they can find my work on various YouTube channels
Hmm.
that begin with this video is brought to you by Nebula.
Nice.
If it was, if it has that, there's a chance I worked on it. But mainly, if you like movies, subscribe to Patrick Willems. He makes a lot of cool stuff. Subscribe to Cinema Wins. He does as well. They're both lovely to work with, and I, hope that their videos keep getting the views that they do because
Yeah.
I'm glad people really like them.
Yeah, I'm a fan as well. Great stuff on there. I'm excited to check out the Bollywood video. But yeah, no, thanks for dropping by. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, G9892. You can follow the Waffle Press at the Waffle Press on Twitter, at the Waffle Press Podcast on Instagram. We're on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Please like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We've been professionally unprofessional.